Welcome into another edition of Press Coverage. Dan Hope joined by Andy Anders here at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. We've spent the first couple weeks of this talking about Ohio State's quarterback situation, and coming out of week one, not much has really changed. Ryan Day said Tuesday that Kyle McCord will be the starter against Youngstown State, but he expects Devin Brown to play more than he did against Indiana. And to that end, Ryan Day was asked, is Kyle McCord, is he the starter? And they kind of sidestepped that question. He did not want to commit to Kyle McCord being the starter beyond this week. And so while we saw Kyle take the vast majority of the snaps against Indiana, it still feels like this competition's not over yet.
I'd agree with you there, Dan. I think Dave specifically said he doesn't want to draw hard lines in the competition, and seemed open to the idea, of this continuing through the next couple of weeks. Definitely, you'd expect Devin to get a chance to get some more reps against Youngstown State. Not a game you expect to be competitive. Of course, we expected Devin to get more reps than he did this past week too, but I think a Big Ten road game is a little different than an FCS opponent at home.
Yeah, and obviously a game that didn't quite go the way people expected it would, with Ohio State never quite pulling away, the offense never quite getting into a rhythm, and that had a lot to do with it. As Ryan Day said after the game Saturday, I didn't really want to take a risk of bringing those guys in and out in a game where they hadn't built a big lead because the offense never really got going. The offense went 3 and out both times Devin went out there, and so they ultimately decided to ride with Kyle. But I think you come out of that first game, Kyle, I think he went 20 and 33, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. Not the kind of performance that Kyle McCord needed to prove that he is the guy.
No, I would agree with you there, Dan. Now, a guy who is starting to prove maybe that he's the guy to this coaching staff on defense is Josh Proctor. Both Day and defensive coordinator Jim Knowles today stated that he will be the starter going forward, and not just for Youngstown State, the way Day put it, but like more so long term. I think they've seen the consistency they want from him, and a guy who made some nice plays running downhill Saturday.
Yeah, and that can still change because Jim Knowles said he expects it to be, quote, highly contested at that position. He said that the battle was really close going into that first week between Josh Proctor and Malik Hartford. And I think we saw that with the way the game played out, that Malik Hartford actually played the final 4 series of the game on defense for Ohio State. And as he continues to gain experience as a true freshman, I think, he's still a guy who could push for that starting job. Obviously, the surprise there was that we didn't see Jihad Carter play at all, and the way Ryan Day and Jim Knowles talked about that, I think some people thought maybe, he was injured. It didn't sound like it was an injury situation. It sounded like it's been a practice performance situation where they just haven't seen what they need to see yet from Jihad for him to be at the top of that depth chart. So right now, Josh Proctor is the starter. I think he played really well in the 30 snaps he got against Indiana, so I think for right now, that's the right move. Now, it's also fair to say that the offense they played against week one, one of the storylines of today was the fact that Indiana ran a triple option offense out there, and that was not what Jim Knowles or anyone on Ohio State's defense expected. And so we have to see how Josh Proctor does against a more traditional drop back passing offense. As Ryan Day said on Tuesday, the big question for Josh Proctor throughout his career has always been that consistency. We've seen him flash and make those big plays, but he doesn't always make the play they need him to make. And so he has to prove he can do that as they start going up against more talented offenses. I think even next week against Western Kentucky, we'll start to see more of that with the type of passing offense that Western Kentucky has had in the past. But for right now, Josh Proctor's the guy, and I think based on what we saw against Indiana, that's the right decision.
No, I'd agree with you there. Honestly, the way he blew up that one play, came downhill, clotheslined a player. He has a great nose for the ball in those sorts of lateral plays, the triple option. It was an offense suited to his skill set, it felt like. So, again, we'll be interested to see how he does against a more downfield passing attack. Of course, one other big concern for this team going forward is the offensive line play. Only one offensive lineman graded out a champion. We found out from day to day. It was Josh Fryer at right tackle. Had some issues, consistency in the running game. He said 50% efficiency on first and second downs, but also said that he feels a lot of the issues are correctable. So what were your takeaways as far as the offensive line goes today from that?
Yeah, I mean, it was clearly not a great first game for the offensive line, but it was the first game. You have 3 new starters there. We talked about it going into last week. You had to expect some kinks in week 1. And so this week against Youngstown State, certainly an opportunity to try to build some momentum. I don't know how much we're really going to learn from watching Ohio State play against an FCS school, but nevertheless, it's an opportunity for Ohio State to evaluate those mistakes and and try to correct some of those mistakes this week. And I think that's really going to be a point of emphasis. I think you look into this second game against Youngstown State at noon on Saturday. The number one thing Ohio State certainly is going to want to accomplish is get some rhythm for those quarterbacks, get some rhythm for those offensive line as you start getting toward those first big games like the Notre Dame game coming up in week 4.
Absolutely. I think those are all great points there, Dan. And really what you want to see too is I think giving McCourt a little more time to find things consistently, right? There were a few moments in that Indiana game he had time back in the pocket, but also, times when he was getting hit, times when he was under pressure. You'd like to see that consistency start to develop against an FCS opponent like Youngstown State, both there and in the mud.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Press Coverage. Stay tuned with 11 Warriors for full coverage all week long as Ohio State prepares to play its second game of the year against Youngstown State.